My father didn't drown in the lake. He drowned long before that, inside himself. But on June 21st, the lake finally claimed what was left. I was 5 years old when my father died in the lake. They found him on the hottest day of summer, floating face down near the reeds where the water turned green and thick. The smell reached the road before the body did, sweet, rot mixing with stagnant water and cheap beer. His wheelchair sat abandoned on the shore, one wheel still spinning slowly in the breeze. The coroner said he'd choked on his own vomit before he drowned, said the alcohol levels in his blood were high enough to kill a horse. But no one could explain how a man who could walk had gotten himself into the middle of the lake. It's an accident, they told me. Their voices careful and false. A terrible accident. But even at 5, I knew better. My father had been drowning for years. The lake just made it official. My mother had died 3 months earlier, hit by a train at the crossing near town. They'd found her necklace cheap gold chain, half of it crushed into the gravel but not much else worth identifying. The police called it suicide. The priest called it tragedy. My father called it the horror, finally getting what she deserved, and opened another beer. After the funeral, my uncle came to collect me. My father's older brother, 40 years old, successful, living in a clean house 3 towns over, with a wife and 2 daughters. He stood in the doorway of the lake house, looking at my father passed out on the couch, then at me with my small suitcase and frightened eyes. "I can't do it," he said. Not to me, but to the social worker beside him. His voice was tight, almost panicked. "I can't take him. Let someone else. Anyone else." The social worker tried to reason with him. Family. Responsibility. The boy has nowhere to go. But my uncle just kept shaking his head, backing away like I carried some contagion he couldn't risk bringing home. "You don't understand," he whispered, and his eyes went to the lake visible through the grimy window that placed this family. I got out. I can't go back. Not even for him. He walked away and never looked back. The family that took me in lived far from lakes and trains and the smell of beer-soaked despair. They were kind people, quiet, careful people who gave me clean clothes and hot meals and a bedroom with a lock on the inside of the door. They never hit me, never screamed, never stumbled home, reeking of alcohol and rage. But they also never called me by my name. For 25 years, I was dear or sweetheart or young man, anything but Maxim, as if speaking. My real name might crack open something they'd worked so hard to seal shut. I built a new life. Got educated, got employed, got engaged to a woman who'd never seen the inside of a house where every surface was sticky with spilled beer and shame. I became someone who'd never watched his father drown, someone who'd never been left behind. But blood doesn't forget, just waits. The letter arrived on a Tuesday in late June, 25 years to the day after they'd pulled my father from the lake. Estate of Fyodor Sokolov, pending removal. As sole surviving heir, your immediate attention required. I stared at those words. Sole surviving errand, felt something cold settle in my chest. My uncle was still alive. I'd found him online once. Still living in that clean house with his wife, his daughters grown now with families of their own. But legally, officially, he'd severed every tie to our side of the family. Changed his last name, made himself not exist in any documents connected to my father or grandfather. Smart man. Should have done the same. Should have crumpled the letter and forgotten it. But that night, I dreamed of the lake for the first time in years. Dark water and the sound of a wheelchair moving across a wooden floor. That distinctive squeak of the broken front wheel my father never bothered to fix. And beneath it, a voice, "Come home, Maxim. Come see what you left behind." I drove north on a Wednesday, the sun hanging swollen and yellow in a cloudless sky. The heat was vicious, the kind that makes the air shimmer and turns your lungs into furnaces. By the time I reached the lake house, my shirt was plastered to my back, and the smell of hot pine and stagnant water filled the car. The house looked like something trying to die but couldn't figure out how. Gray wood, broken shutters, porch that sagged like a broken spine. It squatted too close to the water's edge, as if over the years it had been slowly sliding toward the lake. And the door was open, just a crack, like an invitation. The smell inside was worse than I remembered: mold and rot, and something underneath that reminded me of meat left too long in the sun. Flies buzzed lazy circles in the stale air. Every surface was covered in dust except the floor, where fresh footprints tracked through the grime. Large footprints, man's shoes. Recent, I followed them to the kitchen and stopped cold. On the counter, arranged with deliberate care, was a collection of items. An empty beer bottle, its label peeled away. A rusted wheelchair wheel, still crusted with dried lake mud, and half of a necklace cheap gold chain broken and bent. My mother's necklace, the one from the train tracks. Beside them lay a photograph I'd never seen before. 3 people. My grandfather, tall and stern in a dark suit. My father as a young man before the wheelchair, before the alcohol, had hollowed him out. And my uncle, maybe 16, standing slightly apart from the others with an expression I recognized, the look of someone already planning their escape. Someone had scratched out my uncle's face so violently the paper had torn through, and written on the back in my father's handwriting, "Coward. Blood never changes." The temperature dropped, not gradually, instantly, like walking into a freezer. My breath came out in visible clouds, despite the summer heat pressing against the windows. From upstairs came a sound that stopped my heart. The squeak of a wheelchair. The distinctive rhythm I'd heard every day of my childhood. Squeak roll, squeak roll, squeak roll, moving slowly across the floor above me. My father had been dead for 25 years. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in my car and drive until I could remember the way back. But instead I climbed the stairs, each step groaning under my weight like the house was announcing my presence. The sound came from my father's old bedroom. The door was closed, but sickly yellow-green light leaked from underneath, the color of sunlight, filtering through algithic water. I reached for the doorknob. It was wet, cold. My hand came away smelling of lake water and stale beer. "Dad," my voice cracked on the word. The squeaking stopped. Then from directly behind the door, a voice, wet, thick, like words spoken through a mouthful of mud. "Maxim, you came back. Not like your coward uncle. You came. You're dead." A laugh low, gurgling. "Dead is just a word, boy. Place is forever." The door swung open on its own, moving slowly like pushing through water. The room was empty, but the floor was soaking wet. Water pooled in the warped depressions of the wood. And cutting through those pools were tracks, wheelchair tracks, leading from the bed to the window and back again, over and over, wearing a circuit into the floorboards. The window stood open. Beyond it, the lake stretched out perfectly still in the fading light. And on that glassy surface, I could see ripples spreading outward in slow circles, like something heavy moving beneath. "He thought he could escape," the voice said. Now behind me in the hallway, "Your uncle changed his name, moved away. Pretended he wasn't born in this house, didn't grow up on this shore." I spun around. The hallway was empty, but wet footprints led from my father's room to the small bedroom at the end of the hall. My old room. But his daughter came back. The voice continued, moving with those impossible footprints. "Sweet little thing, 16 years old. Wanted to see where her daddy grew up. He begged her not to come. Begged her." The footprints stopped at my door. "They found her in her bathtub 3 days after she got home, drowned. They said it was a seizure, maybe drugs. But we knew. The lake knew." My hand was on the doorknob before I realized I was moving. The door swung open. My old room was exactly as I'd left it. The narrow bed, the water-stained wallpaper, the window overlooking the lake. But on the bed, someone had arranged more photographs. Dozens of them spreading across the blanket like a timeline. My grandfather as a young man, standing beside a woman. My grandmother, I'd never known her name. Never been told what happened to her. My grandfather, older now, standing alone. My father as a boy, maybe 4 years old, staring at the camera with hollow eyes. My father and uncle as teenagers. My uncle's face scratched out in this one too. My father in his wheelchair. My mother beside him, her face already scratched away. And at the end, a photograph that made my blood freeze. Me at 5 years old, standing beside my uncle's daughter, girl I'd never met, never even knew existed. We were at a lake. Not this one, but the resemblance was unmistakable. On the back, blood always finds blood. She came looking for family. My father's voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. Tracked you down through old records, wanted to meet her cousin. You were at summer camp. She waited by the lake for you. I remembered that summer. Remembered the camp. Remembered them sending me home early because of an incident. A girl had drowned in the lake, but they'd never told us who. You see, Maxim? The voice was right behind me now. Your uncle thought he could break the chain, thought keeping his children away from this place would save them. But blood is blood. The lake always finds what belongs to it. I turned slowly. My father stood in the doorway, bloated, pale, streaming water. His eyes were clouded white like spoiled eggs, but fixed on me with terrible focus. He was smiling. Every generation, he said. My father drowned my mother when I was 4, made it look like an accident. Then the lake started calling to him. He walked in one night when I was 8. They found him floating near the same spot. He wheeled forward the chair, moving on its own, that familiar squeak cutting through the thick air. Then it was my turn. The drink, the wheelchair, your mama running. But the lake is patient. It waited. And when she tried to take you away, he shook his head. The train was faster. Why? I whispered. Why us? Why this family? Because we fed it. His smile widened. My great-grandfather built this house, drowned his wife in that lake because she wanted to leave, held her under until she stopped fighting. The lake tasted that murder, that blood, and it got hungry. Every generation since, it's taken someone. And every generation, we've given it what it wants. I won't. I backed toward the window. I left. I got out. I don't have to. Your uncle said the same thing. My father's clouded eyes gleamed, but his daughter came back. And now? He tilted his head, listening to something I couldn't hear. Now it's your turn to choose. The floor beneath my feet was suddenly wet. Water seeping up through the floorboards, rising around my ankles. Cold, thick with sediment. You can run like your uncle, my father said softly. Leave here. Go back to your life. But the lake will follow. It will find someone you love. Your woman, your children, your children's children. Blood always pays. He leaned forward in his chair. Or you can end it. Right here, right now. You're the last of the line, Maxim. No wife. No children yet. If you give yourself to the lake, it ends. The hunger stops. Your uncle's family lives. Any future you might have had. It dies here, but it dies clean. I ran. Down the stairs, water now flowing down them like a waterfall. Through the kitchen water pouring from the faucets, the ceiling, the walls. Out onto the porch that nearly collapsed under my feet. The lake was rising. Not gradually. All at once. The shore was already underwater, the yard flooding, water creeping toward the house with deliberate hunger. At the water's edge, now barely 10 feet from the porch, was my father's wheelchair, half submerged. Standing in the water around it were figures. My grandfather, a rope of weeds around his neck. My grandmother, her dress billowing around her like a jellyfish. My mother, half her face gone, her necklace glinting at her ruined throat. And a teenage girl I recognized from the photograph. My uncle's daughter, my cousin. Staring at me with those horrible white eyes. Maxim, they said in unison. Their voices like water over stones. It's time. Time to end it. Time to come home. My father appeared beside me on the porch, not in his wheelchair now, standing, walking, his twisted legs somehow working in death as they never had in life. You're a good boy, he said. You always were, not like your uncle. Not a coward. You understand duty, sacrifice? The water reached the porch, climbed the steps. It's warm and thick, smelling of rot and beer and something older. This is your inheritance, my father continued. This curse, this hunger, but you can end it. Walk into that water. Let it take you. The debt is paid. The chain breaks. Everyone else lives. The figures in the water were closer now, walking through the flood toward me, reaching with pale, waterlogged hands. I thought of my fiancée, the life I'd built, the future I'd planned. I thought of my uncle, living with the knowledge that his daughter had died because he ran. I thought of the photograph upstairs. Blood always finds blood. And I thought, what if he's lying? What if this is just what it says to make you walk in willingly? But then, I remembered my cousin. drowned in a bathtub hundreds of miles from this place. The lake had reached her anyway. If I ran, it would reach someone else. I'm sorry, I whispered to the life I'd never have, to the woman I'd never marry, to the children who would never be born. And I stepped off the porch into the water. It was warm, warmer than it should have been. It rose around me quickly, knees waist, chest pulling me forward with gentle insistence. The figures parted to let me through, their white eyes watching, their mouths moving in silent encouragement. My father walked beside me, keeping pace. That's it, it's just a little further, to the deep part. Where the others are waiting, the water was at my neck. My chin, I could feel the bottom dropping away beneath my feet, the mud giving way to nothing. Good boy, my father said. You always were the good. I grabbed him. My hands closed around his waterlogged throat, and his eyes went wide with surprise. Before he could react, I shoved him backward with all my strength. He fell into the deeper water with a splash, and suddenly the figures around me began to scream. Not with mouths, with the water itself, a high, keening wail that made my ears ring. You can't, my father shouted, thrashing. You have to. The debt. Fuck the debt, I screamed back. Fuck this lake. Fuck this family. I lunged forward and grabbed his head, shoving it under the water. He fought stronger than he should have been, stronger than he'd been in life, but I held on. Held him under just like his father had held his mother. Just like his grandfather had held his grandmother. The lake began to churn. The other figures were moving toward me, hands outstretched, but the water itself seemed confused. Pulling in different directions at once, my father stopped struggling. His body went limp in my hands, and then he began to dissolve. Not rotting, dissolving. It's turning to water, to nothing, streaming away through my fingers. The others were dissolving too. My grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, my cousin, all of them melting back into the lake that had made them. The water started to recede, fast, pulling away from the house, away from the shore, rushing back toward the center of the lake with a sound like a great indrawn breath. I collapsed on the muddy ground, gasping as the water drained away around me. Within minutes, the lake had returned to its normal level. The figures were gone. The wheelchair sat empty on the shore, just a piece of rusted metal. The house behind me was silent. They found me the next morning, unconscious on the shore, suffering from hypothermia, despite the summer heat. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive, said I must have fallen in, hit my head, somehow made it back to shore. I didn't correct them. The house was demolished 2 weeks later. I signed the papers for my hospital bed, sold the land to the county for $1. They filled in the foundation with concrete, planted grass over it, erased it like it had never been, but the lake remains. They can't fill in a lake. I went back once, a year later, just to see, just to be sure. The water was calm, clear. I saw fish swimming near the surface. A family was having a picnic on the shore. Children were laughing, splashing in the shallows. Normal, clean, just a lake. I married my fiancée that fall. We moved west, as far from water as we could get. Desert country. Mountains and dust and air, so dry it cracks your lips. We decided not to have children. It wasn't a hard decision, we both agreed. Some things shouldn't be passed on. My uncle died 3 years later. Heart attack in his sleep, peaceful. His remaining daughter sent me a card, said he'd been happy at the end. At peace for the first time in decades? Maybe he knew. Maybe he felt it when the chain broke, or maybe he just got lucky. I still dream about the lake sometimes, but they're different dreams now. In them, I'm standing on the shore and the water is singing, that same glass violin sound. But this time it's not calling me, it's mourning. Mourning the end of a feast that lasted for generations. Mourning the bloodline that finally said no. In the dreams, I can see shapes moving beneath the surface. But they're not my family anymore. They're just shadows, memories, ghosts of ghosts, fading a little more with each passing year. Sometimes I wonder if I really broke the curse, or if I just postponed it. If the lake is patient enough to wait for my uncle's grandchildren, or their children, to forget the warnings and come looking for their roots. But then I remember my father's face as he dissolved in my hands, the shock in those clouded eyes, the understanding that, for once, the lake didn't get what it wanted. Some chains can be broken, Some debts can be refused. Some family legacies die exactly where they should, in the dark water that made them, held under until they stop struggling, until they turn back into nothing but bad stories and worse dreams. I am Maxim Sokolov, the last of my line. The lake can sing for all eternity, never coming home.